Hey guys, the Comics Kid 2099 here to talk about another episode of Superman the Animated Series. Today, I'll be talking about the episode A Little Piece of Home. First, I'll quickly sum up the episode with some spoilers sprinkled in for good measure, and then I'll give my thoughts on the episode. When Lex Luthor holds a press conference for the opening of his new museum, Clark overhears some 2-bit thugs preparing to steal a jewel from the museum. Seems simple enough, except that when Superman tries to stop them and gets too close to a meteor rock, he is inexplicably weakened, and the thugs get away. Of course, by now, you know the meteor rock is kryptonite, which Superman and several other characters discover over the course of the episode will weaken Superman when in close proximity to him. Luthor attempts to lure Superman into a trap with the kryptonite, but because the goon he hires to do the job is an idiot, it doesn't work out. So Luthor tries another trap, but is undone by keeping the kryptonite in a room with a lead chalice, which Superman knows will block the effects of the radiation, thanks to Professor Hamilton of Star Labs. And the episode ends with Luthor financing archaeology digs to find any more kryptonite for future use. In a lot of ways, there's not much conflict to build an episode around this time around. That's not to say I didn't enjoy this episode, but I would say this is probably the weakest episode of the series so far. But I don't really see any other way they could have introduced kryptonite without making it the entire plot of the episode and mostly a setup for any future uses of kryptonite. I guess they could have let it be a slow burn B-plot over the course of an entire season. One episode, Superman is inexplicably weakened. By the end of the episode, he has a pretty good hunch it was a rock. The next episode, he contacts Emil Hamilton. The episode after that, he finds out it's from his homeworld. But this series, and really animation as a whole, didn't do ongoing serial storytelling like that in the 1990s. So we're back to getting all of the exposition of kryptonite out in one episode. But this episode isn't without its charms. I like the further development of Luthor as a face that pretty much everyone who doesn't work at the Daily Planet loves. Making Luthor a scumbag who cleans his tracks so well provides Superman with a problem he can't easily fix, which is always a great answer for anyone who claims Superman is too powerful and makes for a boring character because of his immense power. I like how Lois is starting to soften on Clark and orders him some get-well food when they meet at the diner. She's not writing love letters to him or anything like that, but she's not as openly hostile to him as she was even in the previous episode when she was keeping the Mannheim Toyman story to herself, despite Perry seemingly pairing these two up as partners. So it's nice to see some baby steps there. And we get to meet Emil Hamilton for the first time here. In some of the commentaries on later episodes, a few of the guys working on the show said they never liked Hamilton and complained that he was just there to be the science guy. But I'm not really sure why that's such a bad thing. Superman needs a science guy, or else with stories like this one, you would have to give him his pre-Crisis on Infinite Earth super brain. And personally, I prefer Superman's intellect to be toned down a little bit like it was in Byrne's Man of Steel reboot after Crisis. Otherwise, super intelligent foes like Brainiac and Luthor would pose much less of a threat. So while the people making the show never really cared for Hamilton, I do think that he's a necessary evil for the times when you want to get more science-y with this series. I do really like the implication here that kryptonite is quite rare, since Clark has clearly never encountered it before now. This will become much less plausible in future episodes here and in Justice League, as it seems like Luthor has a piece of kryptonite in each pocket and one up each sleeve, but for now, while we're not completely ignoring kryptonite in this series, we are making it rare enough that every episode isn't going to suddenly introduce some kryptonite to weaken Superman at the most inconvenient moment. I did like that Lois throwing paper wads into the garbage actually comes back into play near the end of the episode. I had seen this episode a few times before, but I had completely forgotten that Lois is actually the one who saves the day in the end. This is an especially clever use of Chekhov's gun, because Lois throwing paper wads at the beginning could have just been a fun character building moment, and nobody would have thought anything of it. But it's that, and it comes back to serve the plot when you least expect it. I like it. The one thing I question about this episode is the robot dinosaur that Luthor uses to try and kill Superman and Lois near the end of the episode. We see the dinosaur in the museum at the beginning of the episode, so another Chekhov's gun moment. But I question how this worked out. Did Luthor always have a robot dinosaur in his museum waiting to use it at the right moment, which would have been very unlikely, or did he replace the dinosaur statue that is usually on display and replace it with a robot dinosaur? And if that's the case, that's insane because he went through all the trouble of building a robot dinosaur when he could have just as easily shot both Lois and Clark. After all, Superman would have been weakened by the kryptonite at that time. I get that money is no thing for Luthor, but this version of Luthor isn't that theatrical, is he? And I also get that this is the sort of insane thing that happened all the time in the Silver Age. In fact, this would be pretty tame in the Silver Age. So maybe this is the show's way of pulling from different eras of Superman's history while predominantly staying in the post-crisis era for their influences and inspirations. But it's still a little bit dumb in story, and it's a little jarring when 90% of this series is inspired by the late 80s, early 90s Superman, with this one little bit pulled from the late 50s. I don't hate it, but it's certainly odd. So that's about all that I have to say about this episode, guys. Not a bad episode, really, but it is weaker than the others that we've gotten so far. Hope you guys liked this video and this episode, and if you did, be sure to check out some of the other videos that I do during the week, and come back next Saturday to see me talk about another episode of Superman the Animated Series. Catch you later.